Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining this, which is our inaugural Ask the Expert fireside chat. My name's Steve Leebrook. I'm the US Chief Executive of Systems Accountants. We're a highly niche recruitment and consulting business that helps organizations evaluate, select and implement financial and business technology and get better returns for your investment in tech. So a few housekeeping issues before we start. This has been recorded, as you're aware. A recording will be made available to everyone afterwards. So if you want to share this with any colleagues or friends who aren't able to make it, feel free to do so, and details will be sent afterwards. This is going to be quite a quick, brief webinar. I think since we've all been in lockdown, there's been a situation where we've all got a bit of webinar apathy. So we want to purposely keep this quite interactive and quite to the point. We do invite questions. So we'll be reviewing questions and we'll try and find a way of feeding them into the conversation when and where it's relevant to do so. So feel free to participate and ask any questions as we go through. So I guess to kick off, it's an obvious question, why are we doing this webinar? And I just wanted to kind of set the scene around this. So I've been working in staffing and recruitment for over 20 years, and I've been in the US now in the staffing piece here for about 2 years. Having moved over more recently, we started working with CFOs and CIOs to understand how they're trying to implement technology and get technology used in the business and look at all the return on investment. And change, surprisingly, didn't really feature much for me. And I was a little bit underwhelmed how change management in the US wasn't really at the same level of maturity that it is, I thought, that it is in the UK. So I was going around the market trying to understand more about change and doing some analysis around that. And through our finance transformation networking event down in New Jersey, bumped into Mary, who's obviously with us today, and we really hit it off. And I thought we really shared some values, ideologies, and vision, and values around change management itself. So we got on so well, we decided to meet up for a coffee in our local Starbucks. Fortunately and coincidentally, we only live a couple of miles away from each other, and hatched a plan to talk more about change and how it affects both of our professions. And I thought people have got to hear about this. This is fantastic. The stuff that I'm hearing, we've got to find a platform and a way to share. So this is why this particular webinar is born, and this is what we're hoping to achieve today. So for those of you who don't know Mary, Mary is an independent change practitioner who previously worked with Mars, managing a huge portfolio of $20 million worth of projects and really working to deliver technology-enabled change solutions across Mars for a number of years. I've known Mary more recently and working with her as an independent now, where she's working to help other organizations understand how to design, implement and embed change as part of their journey. And I think you'll agree, for most of us, change is always on, and given these times at the moment, change is something that we're all trying to get our arms around and understand how we can adopt it in our own businesses. So what we're looking to achieve in this webinar, just to talk you through the agenda, is for Mary to give us an overview of what change is. Right, let's start at the basics and right at the beginning here. What is change? How do we define that? I'll be talking with Mary around some of the challenges of how you embed technology-enabled change. We'll then be talking again with Mary some of the structure and pillars around change and the things hopefully you can take away to talk to your colleagues in your organisation to get the change piece moved up the value chain, if you like, and to start being more effective in delivering that. So I'm going to hand over to Mary. Mary, perhaps you can give us a quick intro to yourself and make a start on the slides, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Hi. Thanks, Steve. And I appreciate you having this chat. And welcome everybody to our discussion today. I'm really passionate about change management. I've been in project management / change management for most of my career, and I actually love change, so I've been embracing it and working in a way that I could always learn something new. And change management was an amazing experience for me, because before change management, I would get frustrated where my projects and adoption was not working. And I had one instance where it was a CRM implementation that I was doing, and one of the benefits was moving the sales bonus up an entire month. And because I'd worked in other areas in the organization, I knew that everybody else was getting paid in March, and sales was getting paid in April, and I was working in sales. And my project, specifically, one of the benefits was moving up the bonus, and that's a huge engagement factor for people. And the project ended, the bonus time came around, and we did not get the bonuses in March. It happened in April again. So change initiative is really key to making sure that all those other pieces, even after the project end, still gets hit, so that you hit your entire ROI that you actually planned for. And was able to do it, but after the project ended, right, I kept following up with the HR department, trying to get that last piece done. And if we had change management at the time, it would have been a lot easier and a lot more efficient. So I'm a big proponent of change management, and that's why I wanted to be here today and share what I know with all of you. Do we want to go to the next slide? Thank you. So what is change management exactly? Change management is about focusing on the people side of change. And did you know that 70% of change initiatives fail? That means only 30% are actually successful and hit their ROI. And change management focuses on the user piece, so the people, to make sure that they increase adoption while minimizing resistance. And that's why we're able to get a higher ROI when we include change management. And what the slide's going to talk about is the different parts of it. So over on the left, or the targets hit, change management makes sure that you can hit a lot of different kinds of targets, because there's a lot of different change that we're seeing out there. So we see culture changes right now. We see process, see transformations, and we see technology changes. And there's a lot of change going on. And if you have change management, it helps increase the change agility of the organization and enable change so that you actually hit the benefits that you're trying to hit. Performance, of course, is key. Change can be tracked. So you can change it, you can track it. There are ways to track change, and by tracking it, you can check compliance, you can check user acceptance, and you can foresee in advance whether your project is going to be successful or not by checking the performance of those indicators. And then lastly, what we're looking for are the end results. And the end results of using change management means hitting your ROI, making sure that those adoption risks are managed, as well as controlling the resistance. So in a nutshell, that's what change management is. Steve, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thanks. Before we go on to the next slide, just a couple of questions to underscore that.
Sure.
The piece at the end, Mary, about end results, so the ROI hit, the adoption, and I think the resistance controlled. So they're all kind of topics in their own right that we could probably spend another hour talking about individually. But a question I had for you and some of my experiences around some of that resistance to change. So whether it's right at the top of the stakeholder chain, or whether it's kind of in amongst the people on the shop floor, for want of a better phrase. And I'm thinking about some sort of short-term quick wins where you get that trust. I guess trust is the point I'm getting to, where you're trying to change something. Well, why should I? What's in it for me? Who are you? How are you trying to change me? So how can we sort of do a pilot or get some short-term quick wins that are going to help us kind of explode that out into a bigger change program? So what are some of your experiences around doing that, Mary?
So trust is really, really, really important. And it makes sense, right? We're talking about people here, and people need trust. Change is hard. And that's a piece that really helps. If people trust that the change is going to be successful, that it's not the flavor of the month, or that it's not going to go away, and then they'll adopt a lot faster. So the short way definitely is building that trust, getting that sponsor on board. It helps to have a sponsor or a senior leader that people do trust to start off with, right? And to be honest, right? Be transparent, say what's going to happen, and talk about the wins as well. And that helps build the trust. If you can build the trust, you're so much more likely to get the ROIs and to hit the benefits that you're trying to hit.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess sometimes you are having to push change onto people, and I guess you get to that place where you want them to pull you into that. So that is about, well, what's in it for me? Now I get it. Now I see the benefit. Oh, I want more of that. And yeah, I can understand that there's value to me in doing that now. So that's the kind of magic piece to get to. So no, thank you for that. I just wanted to kind of qualify that and share that with some of the watchers on here. Ari, sorry, if we can go to the next slide. I wanted to take some time just to talk with Mary about technology-enabled change and some of the challenges around that. So in our experience, having worked with thousands of organizations globally of all shapes and sizes, trying to deliver mainly ERP and financial systems change, no two courses are the same. Every business has got a different view on change, but what is common when you ask them afterwards, what would you have done differently, with hindsight, what were your lessons learned? Almost exclusively, it's change management. I wish I'd have thought about business readiness. I wish I'd have thought about change and training. I wish I'd have thought about adoption. We would just focus on getting the tech over the line, on time, on budget. Everyone pats each other's back and the champagne corks go, but the change thing just wasn't there. Coincidentally, I was just talking to a business systems manager earlier on today who just walked into a new ERP, a Workday implementation. Again, technical implementation, but no one was using it. So his first 6 months was all about that adoption piece. And there's an equation that I see used quite a lot, which is it's Q times A equals E. And I'll follow up with this separately on people if you want to know more about it. It isn't a session on maths right now, but it's the quality of the solution times the acceptance of the solution gives you the effects of the solution. So it's basically saying, I've got a really good piece of technology, which is best of breed and does what it says on the tin. I multiply that by how well that's been accepted by the business, and the result of that is how successful or the value I'm getting from that piece. And I think that really kind of chimes with some of the pieces on the slide here. So I'm thinking now as we work down that, the cultural and behavioural changes, that's the hearts and minds piece. That's the organisational change piece. That's almost the psychological part of change, getting people to adopt or subscribe to new challenges. I think, digital is going to be coming more and more, which is around some of the harder change around how do you replace a department with robots, with artificial intelligence solutions? What are some of your cultural challenges around that? I think also, it's getting the right vision. Mary mentioned before around that high level sponsorship. I've seen so many organizations going into a project where that message hasn't been communicated right. Everyone's got a different take on what the project is, what's going to happen and when, and what the outcomes are going to be. So there's no way you can go through that project keeping everybody appraised of what's going on because you didn't get that initial subscription to a common vision done in the right way. So I think, there's lots of different facets to this and lots of different barriers, I guess. But Mary, I want to bring you in here and kind of thinking about some of the projects that you've worked on through your illustrious career at Mars and the diversity of projects you've done there. Give us an example of a project where you got particular strong pushback or resistance and how you managed to overcome that and turn it around, just to give our watchers an overview of how they can tackle some of the prickly characters in their business who are pushing back at the moment.
Yeah, so the example I'm going to give you is a relatively short one, and I think it's pretty easy to understand. A lot of times these are more complicated, but I had one change management initiative that was across the organization, and it had already started, and we were already in the midst of working with the teams to get the change going. So awareness was good, desire was good, everybody was on board, and then resources changed. So the team that was supposed to get resources, those resources were pulled. And as you can imagine, immediately the team lead was like, "No, Mary, I'm out. Like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I expected, and I don't want to take on more work without the resources." Fair enough. And what I did was I worked with the team. I knew that engagement was high for this particular change initiative, and I went back to my team and we worked on a dashboard. So that, because the resources that would have been there would have been pulling reports. And instead, if you use Power BI, you can get a dashboard up. So I was able to work with a team to get that dashboard going and then get some key users in, because you want to make sure that the people who are really good and influencers are on board with this change. Took them through a dry run, right? We ran the process and it was fantastic. You could easily see on the dashboard what projects were red. And it was easy to start the conversation and say, all right, to the rest of the team, why are these projects red? And you didn't really need a facilitator. It was very easy to facilitate. So I think the important thing is, when you do get resistance, to continue to work through it, find out where the resistance is, if you can't anticipate it, and then find ways to overcome that resistance. And the great thing about change management, when it's in an organization and an organization values it, they'll work with the users to figure out a way to make sure that it's a win for everybody.
That's a great example. I've seen examples around your analogy there around why is that red, where different parts of the change program have a different definition within their kind of red, amber, green. So you're not comparing like with different work streams, perhaps. So you may have a data work stream and a process work stream, and they're trying to subscribe to a common way of evaluating where they are on their deliverables, but they're not using the same measure. So sometimes it can be what is a common sense, simple solution like that can really drive the blockers to change. So it's a really good example of you using technology to evidence and illustrate some of the issues. So you mentioned a really interesting point there, Mary, about companies valuing change. And I've seen this with mainly some of the bigger multinational organizations who are, for argument's sake, a bit further up on the value chain in terms of change. But all companies now trying to design and build their own internal change capability or change functions, if you like. So you have a central change body where it doesn't matter what team you're in or what department you're in, you've got a route to go to help and enable and facilitate that. I've seen it work to different levels of success, but I think a lot of companies are going to be doing more of that now, this sort of central change management office, or CMO, if you like. And I wanted to get your opinion, Mary, on what your thoughts on that are firstly, but also where you think that needs to fit within an organization. Is it IT? Is it finance? Is it ops? What are your thoughts around how you get that set up in the most effective way?
Yeah, that's a big conversation that's going on right now in the change management community. And in my experience, the best way to bring in change management is right at the president level. So at that high level, so you can oversee all the projects and all the change initiatives that are going on. What you don't want to have happen is change fatigue or change saturation, because there's so much change going on. If it's only in a silo in one area of the organization, and then like in data, and then there's another silo over in another area, you can't see the overall change, and so people will get exhausted. If, however, you have it at the high level, then you can see where overall, where all the changes are happening. You could prioritize. The president or sponsor or senior executives can make sure that they communicate what's the focus, right? Make sure that everything's aligned with the vision of the overall organization to overcome whatever transformation or change that they're going through. And then, that being said, people are creating change in different departments. So I worked with a group where they're creating it in the data team. And that makes sense, right? We need to have clean data. We need people to put in the right data so that we have one set of truth that we can make decisions. And that makes sense. And working with the overall CMO, then that makes sure that the organization is aligned and everybody's moving in the same direction.
I think that's a really important one, isn't it? Getting And whether you like it or not, it's sometimes you are going into battle, and you need to know that when you are going into battle, you've got the air cover. And what that means is that, you know, the VP, the principal, the president absolutely giving his voice or her voice on the sponsorship around how that should be delivered. So that's crucial. I've seen that go wrong badly where that hasn't been the case, and you haven't got the right level of sponsorship or type of sponsorship for that case. So going back to technology-enabled change, I know it can be seen a bit contradictory where to deliver change, you have to be agile and fluid, and a lot of it is around the softer skills and the more subjective skills. And thinking about change in the context of project management and PMO and governance and delivering technology, I'm keen to get your opinion, Mary, on what role you see methodologies playing within delivering change. So, are you looking at waterfall or agile? How do they help or hinder that change delivery, do you think?
Oh, I'm very passionate about this. I believe that change management should be partnered with methodology like waterfall or agile to make sure that it has the right structure going forward. So one of the things that's great about project management is that they usually have, or they should have, a charter in the very beginning, right? Talking about the vision, the success factors, all those important pieces. And you want adoption to be included in that from the very beginning. And it's very important to make sure that you have that structure. And project management is very solid in the structure. Most people know what you need to have to make sure that you deliver the technical pieces on time, within budget and within scope. Change management works well integrated into a project management team. And they would be, imagine a project manager, right, has different people from different parts of the organization as part of the team. Change management should be there as well from the very beginning, working on that charter, making sure that user adoption and the people side of change is throughout the entire project to make sure that you hit those ROIs.
It's a really good point. In my world, I mainly deal with CFOs, but I think, you know, finance leaders are very focused on cost and risk. So I think, you know, as you've described there, when you combine methodologies and governance with change, there's more transparency and more likelihood for success. But I still see quite a lot of naivety is probably the best word in terms of people getting that set up in the right way. So there's a big education thing to do around that still.
Yes.
Okay, I'm mindful to time. Before we go on to the next slide, and I'll hand back over to Mary, we have a question from Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. Mary, we can defer this to the end if you prefer, but I thought I'll ask it now anyway. I followed John Cotter's change management process. What other processes do you recommend, and how do they compare? Did you want to take that now or wait to the end?
I can take that now. I like Cotter. I like his sense of urgency because I think that's very important. So he's got 8 steps and has a lot of books and definitely is a leader in the change management arena. I also like ProSci. So I am ProSci certified. I like ProSci's tools and methodology. They have a tool called ADCAR, which is checking in and how you track people's adoption, awareness, desire, those type of things. So I like both of them. Like I said, I follow both methodologies and incorporate both of them into the change management strategies that I use.
Good answer. Thanks. Joseph, thanks for the question, and I hope that's helped. Mary, by the way, is obviously available, and we'll talk about Mary's kind of contact details toward the end. So if anyone does want to follow up on anything that Mary or I've been talking about, we can do that. We can do that afterwards. But Ari, can we go to the next slide now? And we'll feed that back to Mary. Thank you.
Okay, so this slide is about the 4 pillars of change management. We've talked a little bit about what change management is, but I think that it's valuable to know how can you help encourage change management in your organization. And so these 4 pillars, I think, are the key to being successful when using change management. So the acronym is BANK, and it stands for buy-in, adoption, notify, and KPIs, key performance indicators. The first one is buy-in, and I think this is the most important piece to a change initiative, making sure that the senior management or sponsor is on board and bought in and very passionate about this change, that makes the job much, much easier. I'm going to use, for example, Governor Cuomo, and I'm not sure if anybody in the COVID-19 area nowadays is paying attention to Cuomo. He's the governor of New York State. I live in New Jersey, but I still watch. I'm fascinated with how he is using change management to drive behaviors for people. So, for example, he is clearly the sponsor. He takes all accountability. He is on TV every single day, pretty much at the same time, and he uses slides to get buy-in from people. And he has like adoption rate. He shows hospitalizations. He knows whether or not people are following the guidelines that he provides. And his vision is very clear: save lives. And everything that he does ties back to his vision of saving lives. What's very interesting is you see here, buy-in, sponsor, and change leaders. He made sure that he created a change coalition or change leaders. And recently, he announced that coalition and had some of those people on TV. It was this past Sunday, where he had the governors of New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Delaware, Rhode Island. I may be missing a couple of states, but there were 7 states as a change coalition to make sure that all the leaders were on board and together. And that's the same way in an organization. You want to make sure that not just one person, going back to Cotter, you want to make sure that not one person is talking about this change, but a coalition of leaders. If everybody's on board and united, it's much easier to get the change communicated and to see the results that you want. So that's the first one, the buy-in. The second one is adoption and resistance planning. This might be surprising. It was surprising to me at first, but you need to plan for resistance. It's going to happen. And you could see it, for example, with Cuomo, right, and masks. People are resistant to wearing masks, or they're resistant to going out. They wanted to go out, so they were resistant to staying home. And you have to plan for that. And sometimes it's not everything that you plan for, right? I didn't expect in that technology change that resources were going to be pulled. Or I've had instances where a PPM tool has been rolled out, and then in the middle of the implementation, something's changed, and now it takes project managers 45 minutes to add somebody to a team. Those things happen, but if you have a plan in place from the very beginning to address resistance and address change, then you can say, hang on, project managers cost $100 an hour, and this now takes them 45 minutes to enter a team member into the tool. That's not efficient. It's not cost effective. Why don't we get the interfaces in there so that the people don't have to spend so much time putting in HR information, cost centers, all those type of things. So making sure that you have an adoption plan in place in the very beginning is really helpful. So in that last example, right, if people had thought about how long it takes a project manager to put in one team member, they probably wouldn't have rolled it out that way. But it was rolled out, and having the plans in place helps you to move quickly and fix yourself. The third one is notify. So notify by communication and training. It's really important to constantly communicate the change that's coming and your vision, and making sure that it all ties together, whether it's saving lives or making sure that the technology that you spent so much money on is actually going to get used. And by just communicating the wins, consistent messaging, training plans are very helpful. A lot of companies have cut down on the training budgets. And there are some instances where something needs to be trained, and we just need to plan for that. Make sure that if something is a new system and it's not intuitive, have a bit of training there to support people to make sure that they adopt it. So we talked about buy-in, we talked about adoption, we talked about notification. The last one is KPIs and performance tracking. This is really important to make sure that you're tracking the changes, tracking to make sure that the adoption rate is consistent with what you've planned for. You want to make sure, of course, that you're bringing them along. And if you're not tracking their adoption or their resistance, then you don't know where you stand. And the last thing you want is to roll out a multi-million-dollar project only to find that nobody's going to use it, because you don't want to have to go, 2 years down the road buying a whole new system again. So it's really important to follow these 4 pillars. Again, it's buy-in, adopt, notify, and KPIs. You follow these 4 things, and you're very, very likely to be successful in your change management initiatives.
That's great, Mary. Thank you. That's a really great takeaway for people as well. And it's really important to emphasize, as I said earlier, that change manifests itself in different ways in different organizations, depending on your culture, your sponsorship, your personalities involved. So there's no cookie cutter approach to this, but certainly taking that and trying to devise a way to make it work in your organization based on those parameters is really key. I wanted to touch on 2 of those, and
Sure.
they're interlinked. So the buy-in and the notify. Where I've seen particularly successful change programs, there's been, I guess, an internal marketing function within the change team, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
You get this, like, guys, we're going on a journey. This is what's going to happen and when. This is going to sting. There's not much in it for you, but we're going to do it anyway because it's in the interest of the group, the company, the team, whatever. And then I've seen this whole engine that starts talking about, mouse maps and cups and intranets and away days, and that marketing machine that supports the notify, the education informed thing. Mm-hmm. is just a common theme of successful projects. So perhaps you can give the guys and girls on the webinar now an idea of where you've found that useful in some of the projects that you've delivered, Mary.
Yes, so it's very important to be able to reach your entire audience. And if it's a big organization, it's difficult. You need to think about the people that are on site. You need to think about those remote workers. Don't forget about them just because you don't see them. And then you've got people around the world, different time zones, different countries, different culture, and you want to make sure that you reach everybody consistently and that they get the same message. And I've used town halls. I've used recordings of those town halls and published them on Yammer, an internal site, so that people can get the communication even if they couldn't dial in at that particular time. I've used signs. So when you first walk in the office, just as you walk in, there's a big sign that announces the change. I've used what they call plasma screens. I don't know if that's the common word for it, but as around the office, we have these TV monitors with a PowerPoint slide on it, and it has the change on there as well, so that people have visuals around the office, but also something like a desk drop. Maybe it's a note that's dropped on the desk or a mug, something like that, to remind people about the change. Better yet, if you have a little tool, something like a little sheet that you can track the change so that people can use it, and also have the visual on what they're trying to do, the company vision. I've seen also postings on, so I've done things like Q&As, where I've recorded a Skype call that's a Q&A, have an expert come in, answer people's questions, and then post that on Yammer and get a conversation going online as well. So there are lots of different tools that you can use to make sure that you reach everybody. It's just really important to make sure that you continually notify people, be transparent, don't stop just at the very beginning, continue to communicate throughout the entire process.
That's fantastic. I think I just want to add to that. And again, you alluded to it earlier, Mary, but when you're going into these programs, it's key that you try and identify someone within the team that is being affected,
Yes.
to be your ally, to be your change catalyst, if you like. Who's
Yes.
that person that's going to be the evangelist that's amongst the troops, amongst the team, and help them change themselves? Who's the person that's got a day job but is passionate about change and wants to take that on a project for you? So you're delegating some of this stuff out, and you're getting those guys to kind of drive that change for you. So that's a key piece, I think, as well.
Yeah, and they continue to communicate it as well, right? They talk to other people, and then they continue to drive the momentum. That's really important, yes.
I'm mindful to time. We promised we're going to keep this relatively short and sweet. I will do that, but not at the sacrifice of keeping the fantastic content that's coming through. So there's a couple of questions we'll feed in now. Amy, given the reopening phases with coronavirus, how will change management transform both the people and technology adoption of the new normal? Wow, there's a question. So how will change transform both the people and technology adoption of the new normal. I'll kick off. I'll give you my 2 pennies worth as it was. I might step on my soapbox for a second, if I may. My view on the world is, again, working with CIOs and CFOs. And I think that change has always been on, but now people are trying to get their arms around a very different type of change. So I look at organizations now scrambling to get technology in to help them just keep the lights on, for want of a better phrase. So how do we go from on-premise to cloud or hosted solutions? How do I look at implementing AI or RPA that's going to help us, for example, in the finance function, perhaps slim down on the need to have an AP team in the office processing invoices, where we've perhaps got tools that can do that for us and redeploy those people, or at least have them work from home and not have a requirement for them to be in an office all of the time. So there's definitely technology enablers that are going to help with whatever the new normal is. I don't think anybody really knows what that's going to be like yet. But the people change around that, I think, is the bigger piece. It's very much that cultural, what I call the hearts and minds change around getting people to work in new ways, getting people to acquire new skills, and to try and adopt new ways of working with those new skills. That's going to be the real battle here. So I think what you're going to see is the whole change management function and the whole change agenda really moving up the value chain now. So people thinking, I can only get this stuff done with a really proficient change function and change expertise within the organization. So that's my 2 pence, Mary.
Yeah, and I think that there's an opportunity to bring people along with this, right? So perhaps people want to work from home, and maybe now that we see that it can be a cost savings, you're also raising engagement. So there's an opportunity, and I would watch for those to see where people are also on board, because it's a lot easier to make change if they're willing to go forward with that change as well.
That's actually a really good point. It's a lot of companies I'm working with are doing SWOT analysis. So what are the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities that we've got? Some people haven't volunteered. They've been forced into situations that's actually given them a beneficial outcome from an organizational point of view. So they're looking to build on that and do more. Others, there's lessons learned. So people will be changing for different reasons. That's absolutely right. I have another question here, Mary, but I'm not sure if you're going to want to answer this, so I don't mind if you're going to pass it. It may be a slightly politically charged one. It's again from our friend Joseph. Going back to your analogy on the way the crisis has been handled, the question is this: what do you think about New Jersey governor's change management style versus Cuomo's?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things I love about the New Jersey governor, Phil Murphy, is that he comes on stage with a mask. It's quite clear that he is doing what he says he's going to do. And I haven't seen anybody else do that. And that's really important. So I've seen sponsors who say that they want one thing. So for example, cutting costs, right? Everybody needs to fly economy. And then there's a picture of a senior executive from a company getting on first class or getting on a private jet plane. And it's really important to make sure that people follow what they preach. And from New Jersey's perspective, I really like the way that Phil Murphy, for example, leads change by actually doing it. So he comes on with a mask, and that's really important. So for me, that's the one big change management perspective that I've seen from the New Jersey governor compared to other governors.
It's going to be really interesting. I agree. So I'm in New Jersey as well, and I see him on the TV a lot. And I think that he's been very direct, very clear, very basic, I guess, in his approach and message, and really broken it down in a way that people can understand really clearly without any ambiguity. What he said the other day was quite interesting. He said that we've been telling you guys to do a bunch of stuff that you haven't liked for a long time. You've trusted me on that, so I'm now going to give some trust back to you. So when I start opening things up, I think he uses the phrase knucklehead. Just don't be a knucklehead about this stuff. So it's that piece around change, right? So he's saying, listen, well, I've kind of beaten you guys up. Now I'm going to give you something back, but don't break my trust. And that's a really key thing. And in the project situation, I guess you're doing that as well. You're letting people go out and do the stuff that you're open to change. And how's that going to work? You must be kind of clenching his teeth a bit, wondering how that's going to pan out for people. You've got to trust people, right? You've got to do that. Okay. So I had another a question here from Frank Powers, one from Mary. When you plan for training, Mary, do you measure success of training by having tests or just taking the course of awareness? So good question, actually, Frank. Yeah, how do you measure the effectiveness or the success of training?
I track both. So I want to make sure that my training, I made sure, first of all, that everybody who said they were gonna come, do come. So when I was training, I actually had a piece where if you said you were gonna come and you didn't come, you actually had to pay. And that often drove up people coming, which really helps because you want to make sure that people actually show up to training. And a lot of times people put that on the back burner. So that's one of the things that I would track. And then I would also track the actual the training itself, right? So you can get a good sense when people are in the meeting, whether they're getting it or not, and addressing your training. And then there's always the survey at the end as well. So I always had a survey. Everybody always filled it out before they left the room, if it was on-site training or remote training, and I would track to make sure that people filled it out. It would be anonymous, but I would make sure that each person at least sent something in to the system. And then from there, you can track adoption. You can see where they were, and then people give feedback. And one of the things I always tell folks is be honest. I don't care if you score it as a 1, which is not very helpful, because then I know what to fix. So please, and then I always have a question too as to if what would get your score from a 1 to a 5. And you can collect all that information and get it better. So you can track awareness and you can track adoption that way. And then after the training as well, you can make sure that those things are actually changing. Because maybe the training was missing a piece, or maybe something changed in the software that they were delivering and that the training didn't cover it. So there are ways to continually track, but I always made sure that I was tracking at different stages of the training piece.
I think
good question.
And
thanks,
on
Frank.
that, it's a really good point. A byproduct of that training piece, that engagement piece, Mary, that kind of, it tells people that we want you to be part of this journey. We want you to be part of the story. We value your opinion. You're allowed to have a voice. We care about what you think about. So that engagement piece of the training, I think, is really important from a psychological point of view, as much as anything else, and gathering the data around that. So, okay, folks, listen, we've got no more questions. They've been fantastic questions. So thank you to Joseph and Frank for participating in this. I've got one last question for Mary, which I hope we'll all get some value from. But this has been exactly what I hoped it would be, Mary. Your enthusiasm, your passion for change is really infectious, and the detail we're talking around now, some of the takeaways have been fantastic. I always learn something from you when I'm with you. I hope everybody else has. It's been really valuable. I guess what I want to ask is, what's your one golden nugget? If you were going to give one piece of advice to people watching this live or on the recording that they can take back into their business and help start or deliver whatever change they're trying to confront in their organization, your one piece of advice, I think, just to leave us with.
I think my one piece of advice would be think about people. Think about the people side of change. It's so easy to think about technical pieces or the process and to forget about the people. And you don't want to assume that people will just do as they're told. You want to check. So I always think that that's the best thing to think about, is think about your people and make sure that they're represented in your thought process as you go through and make changes.
Fantastic. No, I really appreciate that. Don't lose sight of the people there. It's not always just about getting the technology in and over the line. It's around taking the people with you as well. So that's brilliant. Folks, that's it from us. I hope you found value in that. I know we've gone slightly over the allotted time phrase, but I hope you found value from it. If you want to follow up with Mary or I, feel free to do. Mary's on LinkedIn, her own independent company, Change Management Pros, is the way she delivers her services. our organisation as well kind of supports any other change initiatives that you have. So if you need any help or advice or thoughts as a follow-on, then feel free to reach out to either of us. Happy to field any questions and grow a network, a change network that we can all have mutual benefit from. That would be fantastic. Keep an eye to Systems Accountants LinkedIn page and our website for future events. We've got a load of webinars and events coming up around the similar theme, change and transformation and technology. And I hope you found some value from this. Mary, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thanks a million. I can't wait when Starbucks opens again to go and treat you to a coffee and continue the conversation. But thanks to